What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel. And if you guys are new, welcome. We have a lot of changes coming in season 21 with our subclass, new aspects, some new fragments, as well as a bunch of exotic changes coming. So I feel like these couple builds right here at the end of this season are still going to carry over pretty heavily inside of next season, especially our Arc Warlock coming out on Monday. Now for this build, we're going to be talking about the Lucky Pants exotic legs for our hunter. I'm going to be giving you guys 3 different builds for Solar, Strand, and Arc. Just kind of pairs well with the different subsets of the hand cannons that we have, since these things are pretty nutty at the damage they can produce. So going over our exotic perk for these exotic legs, illegally modded holster. When you have a ready full loaded hand cannon that deals kinetic damage or a damage type that matches your subclass energy, each hit from the hand cannon increases in damage, stacking up that next shot for a short period of time. Hand cannons also ready faster and are more accurate immediately after swapping to them. They also provide a small benefit to airborne effectiveness for those hand cannons. So when you have a hand cannon that has something with Vorpal on it, which we do only have 3 hand cannons in the game that can roll with Vorpal, they absolutely annihilate bosses, champs, etc. So we show it off as well with all 3 of these builds in a Master Lost sector, dealing with this first unstoppable right here, being able to stun it in our various ways. You can see how easy it is to get some damage on this guy with these Lucky Pants, and with the different variations of guns, some do more damage, like the Crimson as that exotic hand cannon in our kinetic is able to absolutely juice some of those bosses. Now real quick, I want to show how this build kind of works right here. So with this Strand build, you can see we are on our other weapon to initially start out to get the suspend or the damage to start, whatever it may be, to stun that champion. And then when we switch to our hand cannon and it has that full clip, which is essential for those boots to proc that illegally modded holster, then you can start shooting the champion in the head, and you can see how much damage those 1 bullets at the very end do, upwards in the high 20,000s just for 1 shot from a pistol, which is absolutely insane. Now, once you switch to the hand cannon, you will have that illegally modded holster up, but you do have to shoot that shot and continue to hit those bullets for it to keep counting. If you wait too long to shoot that initial shot with the hand cannon, that stack of illegally modded holster will go away, so it'll just do its base damage that the hand cannon would do normally. So just make sure once you switch to it and you have that procced to start shooting pretty quick, because it doesn't last very long. Now on the other side of that, when you do happen to swap to your hand cannon and swap off of it after shooting whatever it may be, you will see a little debuff that you have for 10 seconds before the Lucky Pants can proc again. So that's where you do damage with the other guns that you have on and take advantage of one of the mods that we have on our boots, as well, as you will see in a second here, to get our hand cannons to slot themselves or reload themselves, and then you can continuously go about your business with switching back to them once that little debuff runs off. Now that mod that I'm talking about on our boots, depending on what we're running, would be the holster mods. So if we're using one of our kinetic hand cannons, make sure you're using the kinetic holster, and the same thing for like that sunshot that I had on, use the solar holster so it reloads that stored weapon over time. So like I said, when you have that little debuff, these will take over, reload your hand cannon, whatever type you are using, and then it'll holster itself, reload, and you'll be able to just go right back into it and proc that illegally modded holster instead of having to switch to your hand cannon, reload, and then go back off of it to get that to proc again. Now, real quick, I want to go over some of the weapons that I was using for this. It is totally up to you, but we do have a lot that I was liking. But first, I want to go over the 3 hand cannons that have Vorpal weapon. They are all in our kinetic slot up here. First off is the DFA, which we can get from the Zavala rewards and those Vanguard engrams. Having that Vorpal on it is nice for that plus 20% damage on those bosses. Well, you can also get it on Rose. I don't have one with Vorpal, but Rose is another weapon that can roll with Vorpal on it, a kinetic hand cannon. The last hand cannon that can roll with Vorpal is the 7th Seraph Revolver, which comes from the Spire of the Watcher, that first encounter, I believe, or the second counter with the giant Hydra and the different eyes. That is where this hand cannon comes from. So there's those 3 options first off. Now, other very good options for hand cannons on the exotic side is Lumina. With those noble rounds, you can get some pretty gnarly damage with this. Right here, the Malfeasance for those unstoppable champions, as well as anything taken. This thing is absolutely gnarly. And then, like I was saying, this Crimson right here fires that 3-round burst. You get your health back on those precision shots, as well as getting the magazine to reload automatically. So this thing with that triple burst, you can do some absolutely gnarly damage with this gun. Now, as alternates up here, I have a bow and a riptide just for something when we're using our hand cannon in this slot. Now, for me, I really only had 2 hand cannons that I was feeling in this slot for these builds because Sunshot and Ariana's Vow both pair with Lucky Pants and are very, very good, and pair with this solar build that I have on at the moment. So this is what I was running, is a Sunshot with Riptide, but you could also do something like Ariana's Vow with the ring counter. It's also a very good combination right here. You can get those headstones to proc, as well as this is that anti-barrier, and with that extra damage on this 6 in the magazine, you can absolutely smoke enemies. Now, when we go to backup weapons, we have our typical Forbearance, Hollow Denial, Cartesian Coordinate, another with Vorpal on it right here. We have Explosive Personality, Harsh Language, and Iterative Loop. This will be nice for that arc synergy as that subclass as well. And then we do have a BXR Battler just on the character, just in case you need to put on a hand cannon in this to stun those barriers, something like that, because you're going to be doing DPS with your hand cannon anyways. Now, real quick, going over all 3 of these builds, they will be down in the description as well with individual dim links. So first off, they're basically going to be the same in these stats right here. Tried to build it out for a decently high mobility with that 100 resilience for endgame, using Lucky Pants with that kinetic holster or whatever type of hand cannon we're using, whether it be kinetic for these or that solar like I was saying for Ariana's, as well as our Sunshot down here. Now, again, for the mods on these builds, not much changes either with this. We're building it out for the Solar Siphon with Solar. We're going for the Kinetic Siphon when we have our Strand on, and then Arc Siphon when we have our Arc on, just because we're using different weapons for those, but I'll go over that in a second as well. With Focusing Strike for most of them as well, and Grenade Kickstarter, keeping ourselves alive, using it for those Strand, being able to suspend targets, as well as pulse grenades and jolting enemies on that arc subclass. Then we're going to have our Charge with Light and Concussive Dampener. You could switch out Concussive Dampener for whatever you're going into for that endgame activity. You could even take off that grenade on your arms and put on Emergency Reinforcement to help you stay alive instead of Grenade Kickstarter, but that's totally up to you. Like I was saying on our boots right here, we're going to be using the Kinetic Holster when we're using XYZ for our different subclasses. It could be kinetic or solar, like I'm saying. Then better already, an Insulation for those orbs of power that we're going to be creating, giving us health as well as our class ability back. And last but not least, we're going to have that Reaper with Outreach and Bomber, so when we dodge, we're going to create an orb of power on our next defeat, as well as give ourselves melee and grenade energy each time we dodge. And you'll see we do have them up quite a bit in the gameplay. Now, for each of these subclasses, not going to go into each one in detail, really, just kind of cover the basics for them, using the Blade Barrage Super with Marksman Dodge and Triple Jump. For your melee, I chose Knife Trick, seems like the best for Scorch. You could also do something like the Weighted Knife, Proximity Knife, depends totally on you. Now, I personally went with the Healing Grenade on this build for staying alive in that endgame. You can use any grenade you really want, but I personally went with this for that restoration and cure, etc. Then we're using knock 'em down as well as on your mark with the Fragments Ember of Torch, so we can get that radiant on our melee hits when we have that powered. Also gain that class ability on scorching enemies, which is super nice for getting our ability back very fast. Next we got that Ember of Empyrean, so when we're using that hand cannon like I was saying in Sunshot, we use our melee and our grenade. We're going to get restoration and radiant, and then each defeat we're going to get that to continue because of this. Next off we got that Ember of Solace, so they're going to last a little bit longer. Instead of only a few seconds, we can juice them up to about 10 to 12. And last right here, Ember of Beams, our blades are going to have that better target acquisition, just nice for hitting the bosses a little bit better, and if you're trying to use it as ad clear as well. Now for the arc build, this was the weapons that I was using: Forbearance, Commemoration, and then either the Crimson, Lumina, or Malfeasance. Now for our super, got that Gathering Storm, very good for damage, with Marksman, Triple Jump, as well as Combination Blow, very good for that stunning of the enemies, plus Combination comes back way faster than Disorienting, and Pulse Grenades, easily the best grenade for PvE, with Flow State as well as Lethal Current. For our Fragments, we got Spark of Beams, so when we're amplified, that nice Forbearance is going to have Blinding Explosions. Our arc grenades are going to jolt targets with Spark of Shock. Spark of Ions, defeating jolted targets creates ionic traces, so those jolted targets from our grenade as well as our super going to give us jolted ionic traces to get us our abilities back. And then we're going to have that Spark of Resistance, so when we're in that endgame activity, just a little bit more survivability with this right here. And last but certainly not least, right here we got our DFA with Iterative Loop and Thunderlord on our Strand build, which I personally think this one is my favorite. This DFA is super nice. I definitely want that Service Revolver with Vorpal as well, because I think that thing for a legendary will also juice because of its magazine size, etc. Now for our abilities and such, we got our Silk Strike, Marksman Dodge, Triple Jump with our Threaded Spike. Now for me, I was using Shackle Grenade. I've said it before, Suspend in Endgame is easily the best of the Strand verbs, if you will. So I was using Shackle Grenade, since we also get 2 of those grenades because of Widow's Silk here, and then we can also slam and ensnare those enemies in that Suspend as well with our other aspect. Now for our Fragments down here, our super final blows emit that suspending burst. Again, very good for that ad management. Next off, we got Thread of Continuity, so that suspend is going to last a little bit longer. Also Thread of Generation, so our grenade energy comes back very fast with this build. And having that shackle, like I said, we can suspend enemies in that Master Lost sector. Didn't even need an anti-barrier gun, because we could just suspend the enemy, use our boots, go through 2 clips, and that barrier was donezo. Last but not least, we have Thread of Warding for that endgame. Again, picking up Orbs of Power gives us Woven Mail, so that survivability again. So I know that was definitely a lot to go over with that Lucky Pants, but there are 3 different builds for you there. That arc is going to be nice next season. I personally like the Strand one right now as my favorite, but all those options for hand cannons are very good to pair with the Lucky Pants. And then those 3 legendaries that can go with Vorpal, the Rose, the DFA, as well as the Seraph Service Revolver are absolutely nasty as well with this builds. So definitely pick and choose, pair what you want with them, but for the mods like I showed you, and for our aspects and fragments, try to keep those very similar, but you can play with the weapons that I showed you and kind of pick and choose what you guys like. But thank you guys again for watching. I truly appreciate the support. New season coming in hot, lots of fun builds coming your way, so be on the lookout for those. Hit that subscribe button and bell so you don't miss them when they do. Been trying to stream a little bit more on YouTube again, so be on the lookout for those as well. And I appreciate you guys again. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.